to the Custom Built Homes feature special, the Baking Review. I'm Hester McQueen and I head up the marketing at Custom Built Homes. We're delighted to be joined by Richard Bacon, Member of Parliament for South Norfolk. Richard's a long-standing champion of custom built and self-built housing. Richard conducted a review of the custom built and self-built housing sector at the request of the Prime Minister to develop a plan for a major scaling up of the industry. We'll be asking Richard key questions relating to the plan. Also, we're joined by Custom Built Homes Director of Planning and Strategic Engagement, Mario Wilf. Mario has been working closely with Richard and his team to prepare the plan. Richard, can you please give us a quick background about yourself, please?
Okay, well, I'm a Member of Parliament for South Norfolk. I've been here in Norfolk for 20 years. I was elected in 2001. I spent 9 years as an opposition MP, and then since 2010, I've been a government backbencher. I was on the Public Accounts Committee looking at public expenditure for 16 years. I came off that in 2017 to spend more time focusing on housing after I got the Self-Build and Custom House Building Act through Parliament as my private member's bill in 2014.
Thank you, Richard. Mario, can you give us a quick background too, please?
Yes, thank you, Hester. Yes, I joined Custom Built Homes in March of last year from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, where previously I was seconded from the ministry to the Right to Build task force to set that up to work with local authorities. My background's in planning. I've been a planner for over 30 years now in various sectors. I've worked abroad in various countries, including the United States and also in Germany and Australia. And I've also been involved at the ministry level in relation to a range of housing programs, including Starter Homes Initiative, as well as some of the planning reforms with previous governments.
Thank you. So Richard, what do you think are the biggest barriers holding back the growth of the custom and self-build sector? And what do you think is needed to scale up the sector from its current position?
Well, in some ways, the things that are holding back the custom and self-build sector are very similar to the problems facing everybody trying to build a house, whether they're a normal small house builder or a large one. That's to say there are two big problems. The planning risk. You can buy a piece of land from a farmer, but you don't know that you'll get planning permission. It's very unpredictable, and it can take a very long time. And the second thing is the infrastructure risk. That is to say, somebody has to put in the water, the broadband, the electricity, and the other services. And so if you can solve those two problems, you solve the problem of housing generally, and you also solve it for custom and self-build. But there are particular issues which would help open up the custom self-build market, in my view, and that's really what my review is about. And one of the key things I've focused on, and my core recommendation, is that the government should set up a custom and self-build delivery unit to make it easier to have service plots of land available everywhere at scale, so that, I hope in the fullness of time, you'll be able to go down to your local council plot shop, as you can in Bicester, but you can't in most other places, and buy a piece of land that you know will get planning permission, and then build within fairly broad guidelines what you want as a customer, rather than what a small number of large companies tell you should want. And that's what we need to do. We need to put the customer back at the center, hence custom build.
Thank you, Richard. And so what recommendations will have the biggest impact on delivery of new custom built homes, and which should be implemented first?
Excuse me. Well, there are different levels of impact. So some of the biggest impacts will come from quite detailed recommendations. For example, my recommendation 5C, which is about supporting custom self-build through the government's planning reforms. Everyone knows that the government is looking at the planning system, trying to find ways to simplify it and streamline it and make it work better. One of my recommendations is that the government should give substantial weight, which the planners who are watching this will know is a technical term, give substantial weight to custom self-build as a material consideration in the National Planning Policy Framework. Now, when that happens, if the government does that, and I hope they will, the impact of that over a long period of time will be quite significant, because all local plans that come forward from local councils will have to take account of custom self-build as a substantial material consideration, and that will have a big impact on the likelihood of more service plots being available, but it will take time. There are other things that the government could do, such as my custom self-build delivery unit, which could be set up very quickly, frankly, in a matter of weeks. I've suggested that it should be done inside Homes England, which already has a big budget. It has the clout, the legal powers. It has many legal powers that have been cascaded into it from the Commission from the from the Commission for New Towns and the Homes and Community Agency and so on over many years. It's got the clout, the legal powers, the balance sheet, the contacts across the country, and it could go and buy land and start employing enablers, custom build enablers to under contract to start putting in service plots, and then inviting people to buy those plots and put up the houses that they wanted with one of those enablers, or perhaps with a small builder. That could happen quite quickly, and it could happen in a lot of different places quite quickly. I think the best way to do that is to get as it were, a coalition of the willing, to find councils who are supportive. And there are many local councils who are supportive and interested and who begin to understand, who have begun to understand this, thanks to the work of Mario and others on the Right to Build task force. So that can be done quite quickly. I think that would have a big impact too.
Thank you. And Mario, do you think the implementation of the Bacon Review will unlock more custom and self-built developments across the UK, and how?
Very, very good question. I think the answer is definitely. I think from a commercial perspective, there's no doubt that if these measures are implemented, and they are very, very pointed measures that are carefully considered, in my view, will have an important impact on the sector growth. But I must emphasize, this is a package of measures. And I've been asked this question once or twice already since the publication. Richard's recommendation are broad brush across the sector. I mean broad brush in terms of being quite specific, but targeted, and also covering a wide range of different areas. And they must be considered as a package. I don't think ministers should cherry pick the various recommendations and decide which ones might be most palatable to implement. I think it's important to see this report as a strategy for the growth of the sector. And Rich has already touched on the role of Homes England. I think that will be key. Investment in new companies and new enablers, and including our companies like ourselves who are wanting to grow, is critical, and the enabling function that Homes England can play. Rich has already touched on the planning reforms. There are a range of issues within that, and there's a real opportunity. It's a very timely report in the context of the government's policy reforms, particularly in terms of planning, but also in terms of a spending review that's just around the corner. So government has the opportunity here to take the report as a whole and implement. And I think, if those reforms that are proposed by Richard are implemented, I think it can certainly unlock a lot more opportunities, both in terms of investment, developers coming forward with sites, and also financial investment to actually get plots unlocked and sites and parcels delivered. So that's very, very important. But there's also a lot of skepticism around custom and self-build, what it is, etc. And that needs to be addressed. And Richard has addressed that through some of his recommendations. And that's very important. And if you do all of those things, I believe that there will be more sites coming forward, more consumer understanding of what custom and self-build is about and how it can be accessed. And then the financial backing behind it, led by Homes England, to really unlock the full growth potential of the sector. That's our personal view from Custom Built Homes perspective, and many developers in our sector share the similar opportunity. But we've got to unlock this market.
Thank you, Mario. So Richard, what benefits do you believe will accrue to developers and house builders from the Help to Build scheme? And do you believe this will help the custom build sector grow?
Yes, I do. I think one of the problems we've had in recent years is that after the financial crash, when the government introduced a couple of years later Help to Buy to try and prop up the large national house builders who were having difficulty selling products, because a lot of the lenders said, well, with a financial crash like this one, we're not going to be doing 95% mortgages anymore, thank you very much. And so what Help to Buy did was bridge that gap. In effect, it subsidized the demand for the national house builders, let's be candid, not particularly well constructed, rather small, quite expensive products, and made it easier to buy them. And if you go past any of these big national house builder show home sites that you will see all the flags outside, you often have 2 or 3 different providers on one site, but it's effectively a sort of local monopoly almost. And they chug them out at a rate that suits them. They sell when and only when it's sufficiently profitable to do so. And essentially you've got a system in which supply doesn't rise to meet demand. And we know that about 33% of consumers would like to buy the product of the National Volume House Builders. The Home Builders Federation did a survey that found that result. There are a lot of people out there who might prefer to do something else, but who can't, because there's not a lot of other choice. So what they end up doing is going into the second-hand market, buying a house that may not be necessarily exactly what they want, and then they get somebody who was once a small builder before it became too difficult to be a small builder, but who has the right required skill set, and then knocks the house around, perhaps puts an extension on the back and turns it into the house that they more or less want, and that's great for them. They improve the housing stock, but they don't increase the housing stock. What I hope Help to Build will do is significantly make it significantly easier for people to get a hold of a serviced plot and to bridge that gap in the way I was describing that Help to Buy does. But crucially, instead of subsidizing demand, which is essentially what Help to Buy has done for the last few years, inadvertently discriminating against people who wish to build their own house, what we will be doing here, I hope, is subsidizing supply and getting nearer that point which we should be at, where there's an equilibrium, what an economist would call an equilibrium between supply and demand. That is to say, supply rises to meet demand and demand drives volume. So that's what happens in nearly all successful areas of the economy, whether you're talking about demand for pizzas, cheese on toast, mobile phones, green corduroy trousers, Ford Fiestas or Ferraris. That's how the economy works successfully, when demand drives volume. And we're not in that place for housing yet. And what I hope Help to Build will do is get us nearer to that happy place where demand drives volume. And because we know that 61% of people would like at some point in their lives to commission their own dwelling, and actually among the younger age group from 18 to 34, that number is higher still. It's around 4/5 of young people under the age of 34 would like to commission their own home at some point in their lives. And then I see that if we can get to that stage, to that point, through Help to Build and other measures, in the report, getting to the point where the custom build sector becomes a much more significant piece of the total equation. Because the reality is that some people will want to actually physically build their own house, but most people don't want to do that. What they actually want to do is have the pain taken away from designing what they want so that they can get the layout that they want. We now know through pandemic, just to take one obvious example, that working from home is incredibly important in a way that it perhaps wasn't considered so important years ago. And yet being able to work at home and still make sure that your kids can play safely is an important consideration. You can build that into the design of a house. There are people who have specialist hobbies where they might want a big workshop or they might want a library. And basic house design from National House Builders doesn't take account of those things. Custom build will, because it listens to what customers want. The customer is put at the center of the process. And I think that's how this is going to scale up. Not through people working at the weekends on a dirty building site. It's mostly going to be plots of land available very easily, some of them through individuals, some of them for small builders, and a lot of them through custom builders who will then offer choice to customers. That's how this market needs to change.
Thank you, Richard. Mara, what role can companies like Custom Built Homes play in helping to scale up the custom and build sector?
So Richard just touched on, and I think this follows on from what Richard's just been saying in terms of the customization element of this market. And I think that will play the key role. We'll come on to that in terms of growth a little bit later. But I think there's a real opportunity as well as a challenge to the market to actually supply it with the right companies that will understand how to successfully deliver parcels or plots that come forward for customized and self-built housing. And that's where we come in as a company. So as a company, we are set up specifically to work with landowners, and many of them are individual landowners, small-scale landowners, larger landowners looking for opportunities, as well as local authorities who have got land, who are wanting to experiment and bring forward pilot projects and identify opportunities for custom and self-build directly. So what we do as a company, and we need more of these companies in the UK market, is to actually work with those customers. We don't buy land. So we work directly with those landowners, whether it's a public or private sector landowner. And we will enable that site to come forward, right from securing planning permission if the customer doesn't have planning permission already, all the way through to making sure that there's a suitable group of lenders who are available to lend on those sites. to then sell the plots directly retail to the customer, to then customize a development for them on an individual plot basis. But we need more of those companies in the market. We have a long pipeline and inquiries coming through of customers who are looking for opportunities to bring forward a project on their site, multi-unit project. But we're not seeing those projects come through to fruition yet because many people are unsure how to deliver this product. We are way behind other countries in terms of understanding the delivery of this product. We need companies to step in, work on behalf of landowners and bring it forward. Whether that's a large developer working on a 3,000 unit site where they might have a Section 106 obligation to deliver 50 plots, or it's a landowner who's got 20 plots who might want to bring a site forward. And we've got many of those inquiries, but we need to be able to step in. And the sector isn't well served at the moment to do that. Everybody is looking around and say, how do we deliver this product? Are there mortgages available? What's the viability of this project? And you can cut through all that by working with a specialist. And that's what we do. So we can work with those companies. And also understanding demand is critical. As you know, we have got a long pipeline. We've got over 100,000 people on our register. And these are real people looking for plots and development opportunities right now. We need to translate that into real projects. And we can help to deliver that, whether we work with local authorities to identify that as part of a garden settlement, for example, and some of them are talking to us and we are engaging with them at the moment. Or whether it's a small landowner saying, I've got 5 or 10 plots opportunity here. What's the market demand specifically for a particular product, and how can you help us unlock that? And that's what we do. So we come into that space, but we can also help organisations like Homes England. So if Homes England does implement, and I very much hope they do, the recommendation that Richard's got on recommendation 1, then we could work with them effectively. We can help to understand demand for Homes England on those sites. We can help to enable sites to come forward for SMEs to then build out the site. We don't build houses ourselves. We work effectively with small and medium-sized companies, MMC manufacturers, etc., to build those sites out. So we offer a package, and we need more of those companies in the market.
Thank you. So Richard, how do you foresee the sector changing in the coming years if the government supports your recommendations?
Well, if the package of recommendations, and Mary is right to call it a package, I hope ministers won't cherry pick it because it should be seen holistically. If the package of recommendations is implemented, then I think in years to come, we should see what happens in every other developed economy, which is self-commissioned housing, often through custom build enablers, sometimes through small builders, who've been largely destroyed. The SME building sector in this country has shrunk a fraction of what it was. That will make a renaissance, and it'll become more like it is in most other developed economies, where self-commissioned housing is perfectly normal and takes up somewhere between a third and half of the market. There are certain countries like Austria where it's even higher, where it's 70 or 80%. In Germany, 55% of homes are self-commissioned, and of course they have over 35 show home parks with more than 1,000 different house types that people can physically go and see and walk around, and they're being changed and they're innovating all the time, and it's driven by what customers want. And that's what I'd like to see in the UK, and I think we have a realistic chance of getting there in the next few years if my recommendations are implemented.
Thank you. Mario, how do you see the custom and self-built housing sector growing?
I think Richard's already touched on this in his earlier response, and I think he's absolutely right. I think the custom build end of the market is the market that has got significant growth potential in terms of pace and scale of delivery. And I think that's where the market will begin to heat up. I think the DIY and self-build market traditionally, and we do get frustrated when we see local authority development plans coming forward and they continuously describe the whole sector with a self-build label. And it's wrong. It simply misunderstands what this market is capable of delivering and what it can deliver, what it is currently delivering. And it needs to change. I think the custom build market facilitated by MMC, and we'd be looking to the MMC task force and Richard's recommendation in that respect to actually pick up the customization agenda very strongly, because it has got real opportunities there. The model that's capable of delivering at scale is where large scale sites are brought forward and then enabled for customizable housing in different forms, where customers have different choices in what homes are built for them, whether it's a blank canvas type model that we promote, or whether it's a bespoke model working with different SME suppliers to deliver homes for them. We've got a number of sites that we engaged with which have got that, but our core model is the custom build model for a blank canvas finish. And we'd be happy to talk to customers or suppliers about what that means in practice. But I do see that there's a big risk still in terms of how this market is going to grow. Firstly, in terms of investment, and whether the investment will be forthcoming, and we get the right plots and sites coming forward. But also in terms of how the legislation which Richard introduced is actually applied and implemented, particularly in the context of what custom build really is. And there's a risk there about the definition being watered down by either local authorities not understanding how it works and allowing, for example, very small scale changes to be made to homes and then calling it custom build, or simply just allowing any form of custom build opportunity on a site. And that poses a risk to the market, particularly in terms of the volume products that that volume builders build. And we've got to try and close some of that gap. And I think there's an opportunity to do that. But I think we also need local authorities to be alive to how they secure this form of development through Section 106 obligations. I think Richard touched on that in his report. And we need more local plan policies which are much stronger to secure this form of development. If that is the case, then we will see a lot more opportunities coming forward, particularly if it's fueled by consumers asking for custom build opportunities. And at the moment, many of them don't know that it exists. It's only when you start marketing sites that you actually have those consumers really understanding what the product is. And I think that will fuel the market. Most consumers, as Richard has said, will not want to DIY their build. And that market will remain, but it will remain roughly at the same level as it is now. The scaling will come up through the service plots and the customization agenda.
Thank you. Richard, do you believe the input from Mario helped you shape and develop your plan?
Oh, well, very, very much so. I've known Mario for many years, and when I first met him, he was in the Ministry of Housing, although he had a background before that in planning and local government. And Mario's a very unusual fish. He understands planning inside out. He understands local government, and he also understands central government and what works with ministers and what gets traction with ministers, as well as understanding house building and custom house building and the commercial world. And that's a very rare combination. When in 2017, Sajid Javid was Housing Secretary, I asked him if he would put Mario on secondment from the Ministry of Housing to be the first leader of the first director of the Right to Build Task Force. And I'm delighted that the then Housing Secretary said yes, and that really made a big difference, got the Right to Build Task Force off to a very good start. In terms of the recommendations in this report and the work that Mario's done to help our team with the report, it's been completely invaluable because of his knowledge, his insight, his technical understanding, and his understanding of how things work inside government. So it's probably no exaggeration to say I couldn't have done it without him, or I certainly wouldn't have been as good without him.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's all our questions. I just want to say thank you very much, Richard and Mario.
Thank you, Hester. Richard, can I ask you a bonus question just before we close? I think we've talked about this before, but I think it's. I mentioned there's a lot of skepticism still around in the market around what custom build can and self build can deliver, and in the context of the sort of skepticism around can this really increase housing supply as a product? What do you think? You've looked across the sector deeply. Yes. What's your thought on that? Can this really help ministers in scaling up and achieving the 300,000 that we aspire to?
Yes, I think it can. And I think that part of the answer to that question is to ask ourselves why we don't have targets for Ford Fiestas or Ferraris or for green corduroy trousers or for baked beans, and yet somehow we have enough of them. I think everyone needs shoes, and I've been at conferences where I've looked under the tables just to check everyone is wearing shoes, and sure enough, they all are wearing shoes. But at no point have we set a target for shoes, and nor do we have a national shoe service to make sure that there are enough shoes. And no one suggested we should have a national food service either, although I'm reliably informed if you don't have food, eventually you die. So there's something fundamentally wrong with the housing market, it seems to me. France, I know they've got more space than us, but roughly the same population. They seem effortlessly to produce over 400,000 houses a year. In Japan, they produce 940,000 new houses a year. We have a systemic problem. In other words, we have a problem with the system, and we need to see it as a system. It's a system that's sclerotic, that's gummed up, that doesn't work, where supply doesn't rise to meet demand. And what you need to do is to break it open by lowering barriers to entry and giving people more choice. And if you do that, then you'll stop having this sustained shortage. People surely understand that there must be what an economist would call a sustained disequilibrium. There must be a systemic shortage. Otherwise, the prices wouldn't keep going up. They would stay more or less constant as a proportion of average income. I remember seeing one housing secretary, there've been several in the last 10 years, at a think tank giving a speech, and the teacher at the back asked the first question. He said, "I've just retired, but when I started teaching in 1971, I had a salary of £1,500 a year. I then bought a house for £5,400. It was 3 to 3.5 times income was enough to buy a house in 1971 for one teacher on one school teacher's income." And he said, "My daughter's just started teaching. She's qualified. She's now got a job in a school. There's no way she can buy a house on 3.5 times income. Why not?" The answer is there aren't enough houses. Why are there not enough houses? Supply doesn't rise to meet demand. Why not? Because we don't put customers at the center, which is why the subtitle of this report is How Putting Customers in Charge Can Change Everything. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Richard. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hester.
Bye.
Thank you.